So we're just going to give an orientation to what's set up. I promise it's going to be like 7 minutes max. So thank you for your patience. So I'm going to explain a little bit what we've got here. On the far wall is all of the incredible feedback we got today. We ran a couple of sessions. So if you didn't come today, you can read all the post-its and understand what your fellow citizens of Watertown thought about different issues, and we'll be down there to interpret some of that. But we're really here tonight to, we realized today that the intersection redesign is the tail that's going to wag the dog. You know what I mean? So we thought it would be good to, we spent the last 2 hours evaluating the different sketches that we've been thinking about. We had a session on the intersection first thing this morning that like 100 people came to. And so we're going to walk through some of the suggestions from people in the community, from the design team, but provisionally we have 3 alternatives here we think are the most promising, but we're not exactly sure yet. So we're going to walk you through the different families of schemes that were discussed. And then Jeff Speck is going to talk about these three schemes. And so you can't see them from here, but you can hear about them and then work from left to right. And they're small because we had to draw them very quickly in the last 2 hours. And then for each of these 3 schemes, we made a kind of checklist, 1 check, 2 checks, or 3 checks based on different criteria. So it might be interesting to look at the schemes. Some of them are better for transit, some are better for enhancing the retail, some are better for making better connections to the Delta, and nothing scores perfectly. So you'll see it's kind of a trade-off thing. So that's the basic setup. So I think Aaron is going to kind of take us through what each of these boards are, and then we'll land with Jeff to talk about these 3 schemes. Are you happy to do that, Aaron? Did you? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, after we do this and you look at stuff, there's pens and Post-its here. Write something down and stick it on the board and tell us what you like or don't like, or like we have no opinions yet. We just wanted to boil it down to 3 scenarios we think professionally seem the most promising in terms of number of lanes, and we're trying to make the pedestrian crosswalks as short as possible. You'll see the criteria over here. And if you think we're missing a criteria, add a sticker and say you're missing this criteria. And by the way, this is not meant to be a formal presentation, so don't complain that you can't see things or you can't hear me, because I got a lot of that last night, okay? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for coming out and for coming this morning. We had a lot of fun throughout the day drawing up the designs. So over here on this side of the room, and as you work your way over, we have a lot of the designs that were drawn up today. Some of these were drawn by the consultant team, some were drawn by city staff, and some were drawn by members of the community. So where I'm standing now are ideas that aren't necessarily fully fleshed out intersection plans, but we thought were interesting and wanted everyone to have a chance to see. As we scoot over, this board that I just lifted up has 3 plans that connect the Delta to either side of the street completely, so that you have a connection from the river to the Delta. This board has plans with roundabout ideas. So it has the initial 3 roundabout from the kickoff meeting. It has the square about that we talked about this morning. Anything with a roundabout you will find on this board. This board is what I'm calling the triangles. So this has plans that can keep the Delta, expand the Delta, and have signals rather than roundabouts. And then this last board, before we get to the colored drawings, are plans that, as we talked to different people throughout the day, we felt the need to increase the access and enhance the retail more. So these designs directly have retail implications, either a shopping street, additional space on the Delta connected to the retail, just ways to enhance retail. And then the last are 3 designs that Jeff will briefly walk through that are a combination of all of these that we think will work the best, but we're interested in your thoughts as well. So Jeff, here you go.
So fast, I'm not ready. Hi, everybody. So these are kind of where we landed today. I don't want to say we're not still considering other things. As was asked, these different features of different schemes could be combined in different ways. We do think these are the most promising. None of them have a roundabout. And we got a lot of good input about that from you all. Generally speaking, we know that roundabouts are very safe, but we tend not to put them in main downtown shopping areas because they're not exactly the best solution for retail. Also, we walked around today with some members of the visually impaired community, and they made it very clear they would not be comfortable if there were roundabouts in the scheme. And that was a well-timed visit. So we're calling, and I'm sorry that this is so far away, but try and remember what I say, and then you can come up and look at them more closely.
We'll have slides tomorrow night. So.
But we're calling them the Four Corners scheme, the Delta-bout scheme. We created a new term, Delta-bout. And we call it that because it has a one-way flow, but it has signalized intersections, so it's not functioning like a roundabout in any way. And then what I'm calling the mini Main Street scheme, which I'll explain. There were questions. What you see in these drawings, roughly, is the areas that are rose-colored, that's the name of the pencil. The areas that are rose-colored are additional public space, and they all contribute tremendously to the amount of public space in the square. What you're not seeing in this scheme, except for the extra lanes I put over the bridge, are dedicated bus lanes. You're not seeing bike lanes. You're not seeing the parallel parking that will be in most places. We didn't have time to draw all that, but that really isn't relevant to how we're comparing the schemes, because all the schemes are going to have those features in them. So the Four Corners scheme is the most conventional scheme, which sounds bad, I guess, but conventional is what people know how to use, and it has mostly normal intersections. One thing that it does, well, the main thing it does is it simplifies the principal intersection by turning it into just 2 streets that cross each other. They each need to be 3 lanes, so you can have a left turn lane, but they probably don't need to be more than that. And what allows that to happen, principally, is that Charles River Road has been diverted to the Riverside Road and is some distance from the intersection. And the only real flaw in this scheme is it probably won't work to turn left off of Charles River Road. And for those of you who I just talked to, that's a fatal flaw. But it's one of many factors that we need to consider, because this scheme actually does most things really, really well. It's the best for transit. Well, I think, Tim, when I'm done, maybe you can go through the checklist. Yeah, I'll just describe them. One thing that makes it possible is all those trips, it's 450 peak hour trips that are going from Main Street to maybe the Pike, right, to Newton. They're removed from this intersection by peeling off here. And the busway is now a 1-lane access point, basically a giant slip lane, but people don't drive fast on it like a slip lane. Because this is, and by the way, who was here today in the room with MBTA? Only some of you. They're pretty confident that they're going to be consolidating the bus stops up to the north, down to the south.
Except for the east-west 70.
The east-west 70 will keep going on Main Street, right? But they're going to move everything else. They're 90. The guy who was there said he was 90% confident that he was going to move, that they were going to move the other buses to the other side. So we certainly, and they encouraged us to feel free to model this the way we wanted to. So this no longer has the burden in any of these schemes of being the bus trajectory. But what you see is this one-way flow, which would then suggest a different direction for Pleasant Street. But you could also come down on Pleasant Street and make that turn, right? So that's the essential four corners scheme. And you can see how much it enlarges the central green, how much extra space it puts up against the edge of the river, and some of the other sidewalks are extended quite nicely. Please save your questions. Unless you want me to clarify something in this scheme. Yes, sir.
Can you clarify, is under this scheme, the 71 bus that goes into Harbor Square, is that going to be on the south side? If that was
South side, 71. Clarifications? Yes. So Pleasant Street is Main Street here, and I think Pleasant Street could be two-way the whole way, but I think we would also probably reverse Cross Street and let people exit on Cross up here. We haven't figured everything out yet.
What about Main Street?
Main Street is two-way through this whole area.
All the way through the four-way.
Yeah. So it's a very simple scheme in that way, yes. In other words, the green is currently this big, the delta, and now the delta would be this big. So anything you see in rows, like the edge of the water currently stops, the edge of the park against the river stops here, but we're saying it would now extend to here. That sort of thing.
The red only indicates
Rows.
how much pedestrian and park space can take it back.
Yeah. Okay, the second scheme is called the delta bout because we enlarge the delta tremendously, right? Now let me just add, in both these schemes, the delta is freestanding away from, it has streets all around it. In this case, it has 2 lanes all around it, all one-ways, 2-lane one-ways, so you've got this turbine flow. It is signalized though, so it's not functioning like a roundabout. Here, you have one thin lane between the building, where the bus currently sits, you have one thin lane between the building and the delta, so it's a little bit more accessible. Here it's a little bit more isolated. And this is the scheme that kind of celebrates the delta the most. And I would say this scheme makes a ton of sense if you're willing to activate, to program, and to invest in the delta. Because otherwise, it'll be just like it is now, an empty space that no one goes in that's just wasted. So this scheme, I think, puts a burden on you, actually, that may be a good one, to turn that into a destination with different activities and things in it. And you'll notice wherever there's rose color, you could actually have buildings. You could have retail kiosks here so that you have retail on both sides of Main Street, which I think would really help a lot. One of the advantages of all of these schemes, I'm imagining Airstream trailers or food trucks or buildings sitting in this pink area, allowing the Main Street to be two-sided. And the most successful Main Streets are two-sided. So you have these streets all come in two-way. Charles River Road is not diverted. Riverside is not changed. In both these schemes, they're not changed. But what's happening here is the flow is counterclockwise. So there is a signal here, but then you'd have 2 lanes of one-way travel, 2 lanes of one-way travel, 2 lanes of one-way travel. So if you want to get from Mount Auburn Street to Galen Street, you're going around the whole green. It's further, but it's a pretty smooth ride, and I think traffic would work rather well because of the simplicity of that motion. And you can see that the principal expansion of public space almost entirely is the delta itself. Did I miss anything there too? This basically has not been changed in this scheme, nor has it been changed significantly in this scheme, although slightly diverted. Now, Dennis, where's Dennis? Dennis suggested something that I was really surprised I hadn't thought of, which was basically attaching the delta to the retail. And there have been a number of suggestions of attaching it to the west side, but actually the park is more likely to be used if it's adjacent to where the shops are, right? And so he suggested that we basically close Main Street through the square. So you take Arsenal comes in, and instead of it turning into Main Street right here, it loops around. Now you'll notice I haven't looped it all the way down, all the way around, because that's quite a diversion. I should say when you're driving, you don't care how much you have to turn the wheel. You don't care how far you have to go. You care about, within a limited area, you care about when you're stuck in traffic and how long it takes. So yes, this scheme seems more attenuated, but what's going to impact your comfort, I should say your feelings about the place, is the congestion or not. It's not going to be whether you have to take an extra turn or not. So what's happening here is that you come in, if you're coming from the east, and instead of traveling straight on Main Street, you're diverted all the way around. And this is, again, a two-way street. It's two ways all the way around. And then, interestingly, this is not a popular path, but it actually functions quite well, is that we're running Mount Auburn Street into Charles River Road. So again, it's a simple cross intersection. Mount Auburn comes down, becomes Charles River Road, and goes through. Now, most people would not go straight through. They'd be taking a right. Of course, taking a right is very easy. It's the easiest motion if you're not going straight. So by aligning Mount Auburn Street and Charles River Road, we've been able to create a nice four corners, again, in this location. These would want to be 3-lane roads because there's going to be left turns at each of these, from each of these trajectories. And then what happens when you curve around is that the delta, which we've made smaller by extending the sidewalks here and here, or the open space to the west and to the south, the delta is now integrated into the shops. But in contrary to what Dennis suggested, our experience with retail, if you think about a Parisian boulevard, you have the center lanes, which travel quite quickly, and then you have the slip lanes, the side lanes, which are one way and which have parking on them, and it's where all the life is, right? Same thing on K Street in Washington, D.C. You can almost think of this as like a boulevard, but it's a kinked boulevard where this is the part where everyone's traveling, but we think the shops will do better if there's a very slow, optional street, one lane, one way, that has parking on both sides. And if you're driving this way, you could take that street, but most people won't because they'll see that it's crowded, that it's slow, that people are pulling in and out of parking. It's really a shared space street. And this is the one, there'll be parking everywhere on most curbs, but this is the one where I've shown the parking. It's a little bit unfair that I've done that. But just to call out the kind of shared space and slow speed nature of what we're calling the mini Main Street. Could be closed, you know, it's totally doesn't need to be for cars at all. This is a weird scheme. But I personally think it's the best scheme for the social life of the square because it attaches the green to the shops. Question? Arsenal Street and North Beacon are coming in these schemes all the same way. However, we have another solution we haven't shown you yet, I don't think. For where those two streets meet by the gas station, we have a very nice solution for creating more public space there and turning the fork into a T, which we'll show tomorrow. Did I miss anything, Tim? So clarification? So Pleasant Street could be absolutely two-way here. Yeah. So I mean, well, I think we haven't yet figured out. We haven't figured out what whether we need a signal here or not. If Pleasant Street's two-way, we need a signal. If it's not, we probably don't need a signal. And as you can see, to get to Yonge Street from here, from Pleasant, oh, you could definitely do this. Yeah, you're definitely coming out on Pleasant. Yeah, whether you're going in, whether you're not allowed to do a left turn. These are the details we have to figure out. And we literally, I mean, I drew these in the last hour, so we're just, you know, we're working our way. You're seeing the sausage getting made. But Tim's going to comment.
Just one other way to think about these is that the scheme that Jeff just reviewed connects the delta best to the retail frontage. The first scheme connects the delta best to the Charles River Greenway. There's only a lane crossing there, and that could also be designed almost as a shared street. So in a way, this street in this scheme is equivalent to this segment of street in this scheme, just to think about the larger moves. And because we think, I think in some ways, and Jeff said for this to work, you've got to put activity in the delta, but these schemes give energy to the delta from space outside of it because we're removing that barrier a little bit. That's a way to think about the three schemes too. Does that make sense? People are nodding yes. And again, when you come see these, because everyone is going to press their noses up to the shop window here, but we took Aaron and I, we didn't let Jeff grade his own schemes. Aaron and I took a pass at putting a check mark 2 or 3 for different categories. So we've got enhanced retail, 1 check, 2 check, 3 checks. You can come see how we voted. We might be wrong. Transit efficiency, 4 corners is by far the best based on what the T's thinking. Activation of the delta, maybe I would vote differently now. Connection of the delta to the Charles River, the 4 corners gets the best vote. People throughput, which is best for pedestrians and pedestrian crossing. Number of lanes, we think the fewer number of lanes, the less isolated the delta is. Vehicular throughput, you can see the voting here. And then Charles River access, which is a little bit different. It's related to this, but that's the Charles River Drive.
Yeah, so that's what so this one presents an issue here.
I see. So you can see if you agree with the number of checks we gave. So yes.
Transit, does that mean mass transit?
Mass transit. Transit efficiency. In other words, what would work best in terms of what would make the MBTA redesign team, they were here earlier today, happiest in terms of ease with which buses can get to the terminals and back, and the 70 bus and that kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
And you shouldn't just count the checks, but I think I did manage to adjust it so they all get the same number of checks. But the categories may not be of equal value, right? Some of you have spoken to me, all you care about is all you spoke to me about was one issue. Others of you have other issues, but we tried to just lay them all out there, but we don't assume that they're all of equal value.
Yes.
Can I just say one thing? This is really early in your process. I squint to see these. They all look the same. It's just the road to the west. Kink here, kink there. I like it. I like the discussion. I think the interesting discussion is moving open space to the retail, whether it's up to Main Street or it's to the west. There are some great examples of piazzas. Get rid of the lawn. I mean, I know it's unpopular for a lot of it. Eliminate the lawn, make it a great piazza, buffer the street. Make life, man. Make street life.
Yeah. To be clear, these are not schemes about what to do with the non-road bed. It's just that green is existing green and red is new land we have to play with. But you're absolutely right. That this is going to be the outline of a whole new open space scheme that we're going to study tomorrow. In terms of, and by the way, there are other people here who think it should all be green. By the way, I hope you understand that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you first, because you haven't asked a question yet.
Yeah, in designing this, was any thought given to the existing trees? There's a beautiful oak, there's a beautiful Davies concolor, neither of which is represented in, I mean, what you're showing here are those really wonderful vintage, venerable Norways that are not going to last a whole lot longer. But there are a couple.
We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet.
So honestly, please be thinking about the existing green infrastructure, which is so valuable.
Yeah.
These schemes don't result in any area which currently has trees in it going away. So we didn't remove any trees, but I'd be curious, can you come to me afterwards and show me where those trees are that you care about? Come after. Yeah.
Yes.
Question, these are 3 designs. Have the design team together, have you decided not to consider any one of those things that Gideon came up with this morning, or are they still in play as possibilities?
They influence these. So unless you tell us otherwise, I think these are the ones that we're going to do sub-options for.
Perspective, one thing that I see that one of those or 2 of them that just fully connects the Delta 2 adjacent, like without any kind of roadway or
Some of these could eliminate, like this scheme could eliminate the shopping street functionally. This scheme could eliminate the slip lane, but as we talked to Ralph and Aaron and Gideon, and we were looking at the throughputs existing, we're like, ooh, that sends a lot of cars to this one intersection. And so I think Gideon was part of those conversations too, the city team. But I think if you, we're happy to go more radical, right, Jeff? We always are.
Yes.
Yeah.
You said unless we encourage you otherwise, is the three scenarios. I'd like to encourage you otherwise to consider, particularly Gideon's, the bottom left solution, the two squares model, where you essentially take Galen Street and reroute it along its original path up to the intersection of Pleasant and Main there. And that, as Chuck was saying, would connect the Delta to the green space and
Right.
and whether that's green space or whether that's piazza space, you know, the name of this whole project is walkable Watertown Square. It also creates a walkable connection and has by far the least number of crossings and fewer crossings than any of these solutions for pedestrians going left.
Yeah, we looked carefully at that scheme and we'll consider it again. The problem is the largest number of throughput vehicles is from Mount Auburn getting to the bridge to get to the intersection. And so what would happen is that all those cars would have to turn along Main Street and then take a left. That's the killer. And the problem is that would require probably 4 lanes there to deal with all that traffic, which would separate the Delta the most from the retail.
I hear what you're saying. I just want to point out the name of the project isn't Maintain Vehicle Throughput Capacity Watertown Square. It's Walkable Watertown Square. So I think we should start the conversation there and consider that first. I mean, me personally, I would be totally fine with a reduction. And I think Jeff's made the point like very elegantly throughout the whole set of presentations here, right? That we understand to induce demand and that it goes both ways and that vehicle traffic can be like water. It'll find other ways to go through. I think we should consider, to your point, radical
Right.
proposals here that would reduce the vehicle capacity. And there's lots of good reasons why we do that for our own health, for the walkability of the square, for our climate goals as a state, as a city. I don't think we should maintain, take maintaining vehicle throughput capacity as a constraint on this project because it's not a real one. It's one that we're imposing on ourselves. Amen.
Great. Jeff, you want to say anything about that?
I agree with the premise, which is, what I advocate, but I don't like that scheme for other reasons, with apologies to Gideon, which I'd be happy to talk to you about privately. So this scheme, instead of Galen Street coming through to the intersection the way it currently does around the Delta, it diverts it all the way around just the back of the Delta. And so if you're coming from Mount Auburn to get to the Pike, then you're going on to Main and you're traveling here to double back and take that left turn, which is again, if you don't care about congestion, it may not be a problem. I don't think Gideon will mind my saying. My problem with this scheme is that it doesn't look like any place that's ever existed. And what I mean by that is that streets in traditional cities, which are the places where people want to be, tend to follow rational patterns that are fairly direct. And we as city planners have an obligation to model, to create new places that look like the places we admire, because you never know how something's going to turn out. So, the number one walking order, marching order I have in my work is to find great precedents and to copy them. And I know plenty of places that look like the other things that we've shown you, but this idea of going down the street and doubling back to loop around to go this way, there's no New England downtown that looks like this. And so I feel uncomfortable making a New England downtown that looks like this. The idea of going, west to go east, to go south. But Gideon has participated. Where are you, Gideon? Oh. So he's participated in the refinement of the schemes, and he's quite comfortable with where we're heading. And I don't think he'd be insulted to hear what I just said. But I'm very uncomfortable with street patterns that don't model places that tend to exist.
Could you help us with number 3? Very helpful. Could you help us with your actions to number 3?
This one here. This one here is, it's pretty much the four corners, but the question with the four corners, and this would address that gentleman's question, the four corners does not need this back street to go around it if you don't care about congestion. Now, but wait a minute, I should correct myself. As I said last night, it isn't a question of congestion because congestion will be a constant. The amount of congestion you have here will be the amount of congestion that people are willing to put up with, and that's not going to change. Although every year it tends to get a little bit worse, right? But if throughput, if we receive pressures from other people who aren't in this room, as we often do, or you know, who knows who, to try to maintain a significant percentage of the current throughput of private vehicles, then putting the lane around the back does make some sense. But yeah, it works without it.
Yeah, which would be this scheme without this, basically.
Yeah. Sir?
Forgive me because I might not fully understand it. To your point, in that the first one where Riverside Street basically merges with Charles River Road,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be the same argument that you'd be forced to go east if you want to go west?
So there's a logic to what you're saying.
It's about 25% of the demand or less.
But you're distinguishing one small path with the main path. That's the difference. But as you know, we've acknowledged that for the issue with Charles River Road here isn't that they're consolidated, but it's that, and this, maybe Ralph, you could talk about this, but the concern is, like, this might work to have this be a full intersection and to be able to go left here, but the proximity of the two intersections makes us wonder whether that's possible. And I guess just to get technical with the gentleman who asked the question, you're distinguishing a street pattern from a traffic pattern. So yes, here you might have to go east to go west, but the street isn't going east to go west. You are. Do you want to talk about these intersections at all, Ralph? Sure. Quick question about emergency vehicles. The presence of lanes and paths will still be quite ample for emergency. We're required to do that. Well, we don't want them to go through very speedily. If you create a street that, I mean, the fire department will tell you they should not be really speeding to get through a place where people are walking and biking. They should be going the speed limit. They'll tell you that. If you create streets which allow the fire department to speed, then everyone's going to speed. And then they'll have plenty of accidents to get to in their trucks.
So, oh, okay.
Just a question to talk about throughput. Is a second bridge completely out of the question? Budget and logistics?
You can answer.
Yeah. Yes, it's completely out of the question. I think the likelihood of that in terms of a process and a cost is just,
Or even the property to do it.
yeah, that would be
That would
cost.
require an eminent
And the
domain
permit.
taking, which wouldn't be very popular.
Yeah, it's really not. So the question was, is a second Charles River Bridge out of the question? And we basically said yes. Not really very practical. So, okay. Yeah, so what we'd like to do is provide an opportunity for you guys to interact, not to have it only be one person at a time, but have an opportunity to talk. Also, all the information from earlier today is down at the other end of the room if you want to look at that. But come up and look at these alternatives, give us some thoughts, some great comments so far. Also, I want to mention tomorrow, we have 2 more work sessions. At 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock is Destination Square. That's where we'll talk a lot more about how do we make Watertown Square a place people want to come to and spend some time at, as opposed to just traffic. And then from 11:30 to 12:30, we're going to talk about the MBTA zoning and how we're going to comply with that, what some of the options are. smaller, taller, or wider, spread out. And then at 5:30 tomorrow evening, we're going to have some of the Watertown Square restaurants here providing some food again. And then we're going to have a presentation at 6:30 where these guys will have an opportunity to do a lot more work in terms of the details of some of the options we've come up with and have a little bit more fleshed out, not completely fleshed out, but more fleshed out options to discuss. So with that, thank you all for coming. And oh, George wants to talk.
I just want to say one very important thing about this process,
sorry.
this next step. There's a bunch of Sharpie markers up there, and there's a bunch of sticky notes. Write with the marker on the sticky notes and put them anywhere you want. Do not write on the boards. Do not write on the schemes. Please do not write on our walls. These folks have been kind enough to let us use their building. But write on the sticky note and put it on where you want to make a point. You want to make a point with an arrow, point to something, write it on the note, and stick it right on that spot. That's the most helpful thing for us to be able to debrief on this. If you think there's a scheme we should have kept in the mix, write it on that scheme and say, I don't know why you cut this one out. Like, that's the feedback we need tonight. And over there, you'll see there are the other boards where we did have some notes from previous meetings today, and feel free to provide additional input. That was more on development opportunity sites. So Steve covered most of that. I just wanted to clarify that because I know sometimes people kind of ask that question when they got the little marker there and they're wondering what they can do. Just
Yeah. Just to clarify, that's only a museum display. Don't add more Post-its to that because it was directed, but you can read what people said, which is why we have it far away from these Post-its, not to correct you, George. But we're going to have two people there to explain what we talked about. We're rushing up to get dots because we're going to have people vote, if you had to vote tonight, which of the three you like the best. So Lauren and Kevin went running up to get some dots, but you can also leave comments for these or any of these. We've got pens and Post-its here. It doesn't matter what color you use, and feel free to stick Post-its. So
the dot exercise, probably most of you have done this before, but you each get one dot. You do not get two dots. You do not get to take anyone else's dots. But you each, if you have an opinion about which scheme is your favorite, put it, of these three schemes here, put a dot next to it, okay? Yeah, don't give away your dot.
we're going to sell the dots for $20. It's going to how we're going to raise money for the food tomorrow night.